So while you're getting logged in and while we're waiting to start, do two things. First, share any best practices or skills that you've seen others exhibit around networking and relationship building. You might notice on the right side of your screen, you can see a place to ask questions or to comment. So we'd love to hear from you on things you see working or that you do well or you see others doing well. And also, if you have any questions or things you'd like to touch on today or have us comment on, we'd be happy to entertain questions. So we'll get started here in a couple minutes. We'll let people get logged in. Thanks a lot. All right, we'll get started here in just a moment. Again, as you're getting logged in, we'll give just a minute or two more at most to let people get logged in here. Under the questions area, again on the right side of your screen, you should see a questions area where you can type in. Share anything you'd like to. We'd love to hear from you about what you see people doing well in nurturing their network, or if you have questions you'd like us to discuss. And Brandi will kick us off here in just a moment.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I am Brandi Mueller, and I have the great honor to introduce Mr. Leighton Smith. He's joining us today and talking about his experience and learning how he has mastered the networking trade. He is a native Iowan farm kid from Northwest Iowa. Philosopher, finance professor at the University of Iowa, a lawyer, people leader he's a people leader at BerganKDV. Most recently, he was honored as one of the most influential people in the corridor. I am very proud to call him a friend, and I look forward to this experience today and sharing it with all of you.
Yeah, thanks, Brandi. And similarly, I'm fortunate to be able to introduce my conversational partner today, and Brandi Mueller. And thanks so much for hosting the call, Brandi, and giving us a chance to share some of our experiences with others. I often introduce casually, Brandi, to people that we meet that if I were a little smarter, a little more attractive, and a little better at my work and female, I would be Brandi Mueller. So we have a lot in common, which we're going to explore today. But some of those similarities I would just share. Also a native Iowan and a farmer's child, and someone who doesn't know a stranger, which I've certainly seen in action many times. Brandi started her recruiting work at the height of the excitement of the Y2K era, when Munster wasn't just under your bed and before LinkedIn existed. So it's a little different time. And from a Strength Finder standpoint, it was fun to be reminded that her top 5, some of you use Strength Finders. She's strategic, she's a woo or win others over. She's competitive, which any of you who know her would be able to identify. She's a communicator and a maximizer. And we were fortunate to meet each other through the Leadership 5 Seasons program in 2009 here in the Cedar Rapids area, and became fast friends. And it's been a real pleasure to not only have you as a friend, but an ally professionally over the years too. So thanks again for the invitation to join you today. So what should we do at this time, or what are our goals today?
Well, I think one of the goals the goals I think we want to share with you all today is to highlight general practices of how to be a high achiever in the networking trade, translating the art of being effective and authentic with your intention when meeting new people or meeting people again, and providing real examples of how we exercise our skill of networking.
So we want to be useful to everyone. And again, if you have questions you'd like us to touch on in particular, please issue those. Craig, thanks for your question about CRM. We'll make sure to touch on that. And Brandi, when we organized our thoughts here, we wanted to start with listening, I think, right?
Right. So God gave us 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. I don't know how many times I used that quote with my daughters, but one of the things that you do a really great job with, Leighton, is asking questions. And I would love for us to share with our listeners today, what questions do you use to gain provocative input from the people that you're meeting and get them to open up to you and make it a meaningful relationship? Yeah,
well, thanks for that. I really do think good questions are the key to learning about other people. And it's something that anyone can learn as a skill. It's not a natural talent or something like that. And I would just say that, there are at least a few categories that I think about. One's being sort of opening and general questions, then others that are provocative, as you said, that maybe kind of spice things up or mix things up. And I'll share a few, but I would tell you they're changing all the time for me. I like to have new ones, and I've tried to be around people who are good at that. Friend and affiliate Reed Wilson is really great at that. One of the best open questions that I learned from him is just, what do you enjoy? So often we start conversations with what do you do or where do you work, and it's immediately reductive and limiting to somebody instead of opening, So, and people are so used to being asked those questions, you stand out right away when you just ask a sincere, open question, and you're doing it well when someone pauses a little, and a lot of times they'll smile and they'll kind of look up at the ceiling, and you realize that they're really thinking.
And you don't know where they're going to go with their answer.
Which is exciting in its own right?
Because it can take the conversation in a whole different manner.
Yeah, for sure. So there are those open ones like that you just don't know where it might go, and then it's fun, and particularly maybe earlier in my career when I was a little more nervous at a function or something like that, kind of just treating it like a game of how do I get to know all these people, made it easier for me. And these days it's really something I just truly enjoy, and it's kind of an art, and I like it. You can kind of tell what kind of mood I'm in if I ask a gentle, open-ended question or if I have a punchy question and kind of work the room up. So in addition to what do you enjoy, I like to have a positive focus. So, what's a great thing that happened this week? Or if I'm being more punchy, when's the last time you laughed hard enough to, belly laugh or wet yourself? Or sometimes I get aggressive with that question. And sometimes there are more exploratory questions about the person that are more direct. I like to sometimes ask people when I'm asking them to tell me about them, instead of the elevator pitch, I like to shake that up and I'll ask, who's your best friend? And then they'll tell me their name, and I'll say, well, if she were here, how would she describe you? And kind of give them permission to just be real and not sell themselves. Now, you've got some great direct questions you ask too.
Well, one of the most important things that I think of when I'm meeting someone for the first time is that I want to figure out what is most important to that person, what matters most. Usually the core things that those things are their career, their family, closing a new deal, connecting with the community, how they can make an impact, and just asking those types of questions will open up doors for them so you can get to know them and what's motivating them and what's causing them concern, and how to navigate those waters is just by asking open-ended questions and just getting to know them. One of the things that I ask, and some of you know that I do recruiting and working with clients, but one of the questions that I ask nearly every single person that I'm meeting with is what 5 adjectives best describe you and why? And as CEO, I was working with probably about 15 years ago, asked that question in an interview, and it resonated. And it wasn't a question of what are your weaknesses and what are your strengths. It was something more defining about that person. And I've used that question in multiple different scenarios, like if I'm having coffee with a friend and I just want to make them think, like, do you know this? Or with candidates, I ask that, and usually every time they're like, wow, that's a really good question. And it might make them squirm a little bit, but it's also making them think as well. Yeah.
And I love how when you ask that question, you ask me that question, and I've seen you ask it many times and so many others. You do a great job of asking it and just stopping and listening. I think sometimes people can't get out of conversational mode, and they think they have 4 mouths in one ear instead of that 2 ears in one mouth that you talked about. So I think that's an important skill too, is after the question's issued, just shut up and listen, So, we talked about, people want to be known, and so everything is tailwind on this stuff. You just have to be comfortable. The only barriers to really the listen part are the discomfort that people feel, and breaking the ice with the right questions, a great starting point. Being positive and energetic, I think another one we talked about, Brandi, and then what you just spoke to there, this finding common ground and what really matters to people. That's really the end game of this skill that we're talking about in listening. And what do people, we also talked about what not to do. What were some of those things?
One of the things that I encourage folks not to do is when you walk in, like, instead of just having a one-on-one conversation with someone, consider like when you are going to a function and it's a networking function. Don't only talk to the people that that you're comfortable with. Get yourself out there and grow your network. Go with a goal. If you're not a natural networker or more introverted, go with a goal that you're going to meet one new person. And as you can see at the bottom of the slide, be interested, not interesting. Make yourself a little vulnerable and tell about your, not just about what you do, but what, as Leighton has said, what makes you interesting in terms of who you are as a person, and have people let people in and get to know you.
Yeah, absolutely. So no Debbie Downers, no hiding in a corner, no only talking to your friends you already know, and no cliched shallow questions.
And maybe not drink too much if it's a drinking event. You know, limit yourself to one or two, and be aware of that as well.
Yeah, be purposeful with the time, right?
Yeah.
Well, we move on here to giving. So after you've listened and you've gotten to know someone in a real way, whether that happened at one conversation or multiple over time, you know, I think we talked about, Brandi, so often people, you know, go from there with, you know, a motivation to take or even worse with just no follow-up, you know, and we talked about some of the things that we both like to do to have a give first mentality, that attitude of helping. And I've seen you do that so well over time. And the work that you do is intimate in its nature, you know, and so I know in your work you get to help people every day, but just generally in networking and relationship building, how do you do that?
So thank you for that. But, you know, really what we try to do is, you know, if you give yourself and you make yourself take down those walls for yourself, some people are going to be more willing to share. So I offer, when I'm working with someone, I offer taking a look at their resume, helping make intros to people in my network that may benefit them if they are interested in getting involved in the community. I mean, one of the things that when someone has moved to a new community, one of the biggest things that I want to see is I don't want them to not feel welcome. And so giving them the options of how to get connected and what do they enjoy outside of work. People usually work to live, not live to work, right? So what do you do outside of your daily routine, and what do you need from me to get you plugged into those activities?
I think on that point, it's not always obvious. We can't know how to help unless we ask the right questions, right? And so I think you do such a great job of just asking directly, how can I help you? You know, everyone's waiting to be asked that question. Certainly people in business development, you know, have those kinds of motivations, but really every person, if it's a business purpose or if you build enough intimacy that you can talk about family and personal matters, you know, having a hard time with any matter. You know, I think about people's kids are graduating from college that you help, you know, or with the next thing they want to do. Or sometimes for me, I think about how simple it is. You learn that maybe they love a particular kind of music or a particular kind of whatever, and giving can be gifts, right? It can be tickets to a thing, or it can be something that is a gift that's personalized.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, absolutely.
Like a gift doesn't have to be something tangible. It could be as easy as a thank you note, and thank you notes are becoming a lost art. We get busy, but you know, when I did Dale Carnegie several years ago, our teacher created a smile file, and there are times where I get a written note from someone, and I won't throw away that card. I'll put it in the smile file, or it'll be on my desk for months, sometimes a year after I get it, just because it made a difference. It made me smile, made me feel good about what I did for that person. But you know, one of the things that when you're networking, I find very effective is finding out when you're meeting someone, what do they need, and what can I do for them to make an impact. And I always keep that in my file. And Craig, your question of do you use a CRM? I use my own way of keeping track of everything, because not everybody can keep everything up in their head, right? And you don't want to miss things. But if you do need to use and take notes to remember something that is important to that person, absolutely. You know, keep it in an Excel spreadsheet of Leighton has 3 kids and he's from Northwest Iowa and he enjoys Hawkeye football, just so the next time you call him, you know those key factors that are important to him. So using a CRM or just a simple spreadsheet is a great idea if you don't have a killer memory. So absolutely do that. The other things that I do is when, the one thing to be intentional with is when a client is talking about a problem, being able to take that network of people that I know and then helping that client by saying, this person can help you with this problem. I'm not going to be your solution. I'm not going to be the solution for everyone, but someone in my network will have the skills and abilities to do that.
I think that's a great transition for us to move to connect here in just a moment. Around the give things, we talked about things not to do. And, I think a lot of times people are afraid to give first. How do you know you'll get anything out of it? That kind of a thing. We're going to talk about additional resources at the end of the conversation here today, with a book called Go Giver being a great example. But I've just found it just feels good to have a giving posture. I'm just happier walking through my day every day in my life that way. And, we talked about the idea that not everyone you give to will respond, and that's okay. You always talk about find your people. It just resonates. And if you give and someone doesn't respond, they're probably a sociopath, or they're just not your person, right? So, and that's
you're not clicking, but it's okay to move on. We as humans care about what people think, and we really just need to know that you are who you are, and if not everybody likes you, that's their deal and not yours. So move on.
Yeah, so what not to do here is don't not follow up. So many people do that. You meet and have a good start, and you don't follow up. So, and also, again, don't be that taker. And then, you talked to Brandi, too, about the idea that if you do invite someone, offer to pay for coffee. Don't show up late and cancel. I mean, things we see people do. Follow through on your word and again, thinking about how you make them feel really is probably the key takeaway here. So on Connect, you really are to go in that direction. And really, once you listened and understood someone and built a relationship by giving first, now you have a chance to add more value by staying in touch, but also connecting them to others, right?
Exactly. So one of the things that I do, and I know you do a really good job of, is just once you've connected and doing that follow-up is, I thought of you the other day. When I was reading this article, thought I'd send it to you and share it with you. Or, just the simple things that you do, Leighton, or, and you're fantastic at it, is the YouTube video. When did you start doing that, and what's the purpose that drives you to do those things?
Yeah, well, I can't sit still is just part of it, right? So I'm always thinking about someone or something. But no, I think so often people are very formulaic in how they stay in touch. And there's places for all these things, but we do newsletters, all these things. And we want to have touches with people, but why not let them be creative and organic, and life just presents opportunities all the time. I'm wearing unmatching socks today because one of my dear friends has a daughter with Down syndrome, and so I'm going to send them a picture of it later, right? And that wasn't because it was the third Thursday of the third month when I send them an email because I want to stay in touch with them. It's because I love them,
Just because you care.
Yeah, exactly. And so life presents those opportunities, and so take them when they come. But I do keep in my CRM, Craig, to your question, I know when I last talked to somebody, and sometimes I got to be on purpose about that if life didn't present that opportunity. So whether it's a YouTube video or, I thought of you today because of X, or I met someone who reminded me of you, those things are good blocking and tackling. And I think to this connecting with others, really challenging ourselves to really know what they need, right? Like what problems are they facing? Like what would blow their mind if it happened, and talk a little more about that from a network standpoint. Right. How do you bring it to bear for others? So,
the thinking big and just going above and beyond, it's the common sense stuff, doing what you'd want them to do for you and blowing their mind, as you say, let's go big on this, and how do we make this happen. Challenge yourself to follow up and show up is important with connecting.
No over-promising and under-delivering,
no.
Right, is the main stuff. And, we talked through about the idea, everyone's just a person, right? And so even CEOs put their pants on one leg at a time and so on and so forth. So especially for those of you earlier in your career, maybe that are listening in today, don't be afraid to bring someone or something of value to the table for someone else. It doesn't cost you anything to make introductions. And when they're based in a real problem or issue, they have real value, So caring, Brandi, we talked about, really is almost that, not really the fourth step, so to speak, but just that piece it's just not negotiable, right? We've tried to talk about skills and steps to relationship building, but you can't fake it, right? And so if you don't actually care about others, it will come through. And I'm sure you've met people, I have, where they're pretty good at the step 1, 2, 3 stuff, but it just comes through that it's a little bit hollow,
Right.
So it's one of the things I just admire most about you. It's clear that you sincerely care for others and that you're living a life that's meaningful and you're doing it because it's a sincere feeling in your heart and not just because it's step 1, 2, 3. I know it's kind of hard to reduce that to action steps or some advice, but how do you do that, do you think? How do people know that you care about them?
I might get vulnerable first and might just be honest with them about who I am and why I do what I do, and give them a reason to maybe open up to me. It's just doing the right thing. It's the golden rule. Do the right thing, and people will either engage with you or they won't in terms of getting to know you. So it's that simple. Not everybody is extroverted or that open, but be prepared that if you want to make a genuine, create a relationship or get to know someone, to do that, you got to, and to use the terminology, you got to get naked a little bit and share a little bit about yourself and what makes you tick and what makes you motivated to get up every day and do what you love. And that's what I do.
Yeah.
When I'm meeting with someone new. Yeah.
Vulnerability really resonates. Yep. There might be some crying and hugging involved too from a.
Yeah, I'm a hugger.
I can tell.
It's either a handshake. If I'm meeting someone, it's usually a handshake when we start, and by the time it's over, it's a hug. Yeah. And then from there on out, it's a hug. So it's just being that authentic self when you're creating that relationship with someone.
Yeah. I know we talked on this one too, just about the milestones matter, so show up at funerals, remember birthdays, and other things that are important to the people that you've come to care about and have in your network. I just have really appreciated that about you over the years too, because that's the kind of stuff that shows effort and shows that you care.
So Leighton, what's one thing that you did early in your career that has gotten you to where you are today?
I think one of the things that I found most valuable that anyone can do is I chose to, and this kind of goes to the build relationships through giving, but really every day I did an act of kindness. And so sometimes that was very planful. I knew someone needed something. And sometimes it was as simple as buy a cup of coffee for the person behind me or help out a homeless person or whatever it was. But I just kind of made that a life practice. I got that advice from my grandma. She asked when was the last time I thought about someone other than myself, when I was a little bogged down with some of my philosophical concerns. And so I just made that a life practice. Anyone can do that, and I think it changed the tone of how I was living and how I made others feel. So do an act of kindness, not hard.
Good. There's so many things that we could talk about with networking, and the one of the things that resonates with me here is what's the most recent impactful experience that you've had, Leighton, that relates to today's topic?
The most recent and impactful one?
I just caught him off guard, by the way.
You did. You caught me off guard.
Off script.
Off-scripted me. Well, it was really fun to prepare for this together, just knowing it's been a shared passion. I think you're poking me here to share a story that's a little hard to share, but yeah, last year for my birthday, I'd had kind of a challenging spring, and I was going into my birthday, and some friends knew that, and maybe knew I needed a little encouragement, and organized a campaign where everyone got a T-shirt with my face on it, and it was all over social media, and it was embarrassing at first, but I ultimately kind of surrendered to it, and it was really touching, to me. And what was touching about it was firstly that someone did that, but secondly, to be able to look at all those pictures and know the ways I'd helped those people.
You've made an impact.
Yeah, and so I think people can, in your own life, you don't need a T-shirt to remember those things when you need others, when you've given from yourself, and feel good about the way you're living, the way you're networking with others. So thanks for the curveball.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right.
Well,
call to action here?
Yeah, the call to action. So, Leighton and I have shared some resources for you. If the story resonated, here are the resources. But I want to leave you with some questions that can help you in your networking. So if you want to take these notes, or we can share this with you in an email afterwards. But be prepared to ask and answer these questions when you're meeting with someone. What do you enjoy? What 5 adjectives best describe you and why? What is a current project you're working on? What is the best thing that's happened to you this week? And when was the last time you laughed so hard you wet yourself? How can your personal experience or influence help your next contact, your next new friend? My advice to you is get involved. What are you passionate about? And go be intentional with your time. Thank you for attending today, and go be awesome.